The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hi, and welcome to Weighted Donuts. I'm Wayne Unger, and today I have Barry Bloom with me, baseball columnist for Forbes, MLB.com. The resume reaches far and wide. Barry, welcome, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, we've seen a lot of change in baseball in the past few years, and we've seen even more change this year. What to you is the most significant thing or change that sticks out in your mind about the game this year?
Well, I think it's just what everybody talks about. It's so many walks, strikeouts, and home runs as opposed to balls hit into play, and the continuing, dominance of pitching, teams trying to come up with different compensation if they don't have solid rotations like Tampa Bay is doing right now, starting relievers and doing full bullpen games. It's interesting. I find it fascinating. I was at a game recently down in San Diego that Strasburg pitched against the Padres, and Davey Martinez, the Nationals' new manager, didn't shift the entire game. When I asked him about it, wrote a column about it, he said that Strasburg and Scherzer don't like it, so he doesn't do it. And he basically said that those guys pitch the contact anyway, and they're going to get their outs, and they'd rather have the infielders in their true positions. So I think you're just seeing a whole reaction and, the evolution of things as, organizations are trying to find ways to win.
Now, supposedly everybody likes runs, everybody likes home runs, but do you think at some point the all or nothing might get boring?
I don't find it boring, and I'm one of those guys who still likes a well pitched game, because it usually takes 2 hours and 25 minutes to play. And he keeps the action, when you talk about pace of game, that's what keeps the pace of game going. I mean, I know what MLB, it's a quandary for them because, they want more offense and they want faster games. And the two are not necessarily complementary to each other because the more runners you have on the base and the more runs you score, the longer the games, the deeper you get into bullpens and the more pitching changes you have. And that's what slows down games. It's the last 3 innings of a game normally that slows down a game, much kind of like the last minute of play in an NBA game, where teams are fouling and calling timeouts, and it just slows the play down to nothing. So, no, I don't think so. I just think it's an evolution of the game, and I was on a broadcast recently where I also talked about this. When I was a kid, the game was a lot different. It evolved. I've been watching baseball since 1960. The game, it constantly goes through changes, whether it's rule changes, equipment changes, analytical changes, body changes. There's no question that baseball players are bigger now than they've ever been. Are they better? Probably not, because people knew how to hit. Guys knew how to hit better 20, 30 years ago. If guys knew how to hit better, you wouldn't be able to shift against them. So, there's a constant evolution of the game, and people just have to stay with it.
Do you think we might see any major rule change to the game itself in the next 5 years? And I mean in the sense of like when they lowered the mound 6 inches. Do you think we'll see anything like that?
No. The only thing I see in the next 6 years is I see them going, to implementing a pitch clock if you can't get pitchers to take the ball. As much much as I love Otani, I mean, like most Japanese pitchers, sometimes he takes 40 seconds in between pitches when guys are on base. And you just can't have that. I mean, you have to have guys take the ball and throw within 15 or 20 seconds. So I could see that at some point. And I could also see, the National League ultimately adopting the DH because it just skews the two leagues. I mean, the three best teams by far right now are in the American League with the Red Sox, Yankees, and Astros. And, the best team overall in the National League is probably the Nationals, and most of the year they haven't been playing like it. Most of the National League is really subpar play at this point. And the only way you can even it out is by putting back in the DH, and it's putting in the DH, and it's for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, you can't sign players long-term, older players long-term in the National League because there's no DH for you to put them in. I mean, a guy like Albert Pujols, his career would have been over 5 years ago if he had stayed in the National League because he can't play first base every day anymore and hasn't been able to do it for years. And it was the same thing with the Braves wanting to keep Brian McCann. I mean, I think John Schuerholz even made that statement, that if they had the DH, they would have re-signed Brian McCann and kept him in Atlanta. But you couldn't do it because the money he was going to get was going to be much higher over in the American League. So those are the two things I think might happen.
And what's your personal thought on it? Would you like to see both leagues with the DH?
Oh yeah, I'm a big proponent for the DH. I'm not. This thing about traditional baseball and managing traditional baseball, that's gone anyway. I mean, the way teams are structured in the National League now, you have 13 pitchers and 12 position players. That gives you your 8 guys who are in the starting lineup, a backup catcher, and 3 bench players. There's not much room anymore to manipulate and flip-flop. The strategy of the National League game has really been diminished. So, and that's one. Number two, most pitchers don't hit, from the time they're in high, unless they're a position player, they don't hit until they're in high school on. They don't hit in the minor leagues. And number three, there's only 2 leagues in the world that don't use a designated hitter, the Central League in Japan and the National League, and that's it. It's not going back. It's a train that's left the station. So the only way it's going to go is to unify it with the DH. And I just don't like watching pitchers hit who have no accomplishments hitting. I'd rather, see a decent batter in the game. And that's just my feeling about it.
No, I understand. Myself, I always would prefer the National League stay the same way, but I agree. It's like if pitchers are not going to hit in the minor leagues, then and the way pitching strategy has evolved, it's almost become pointless. I used to suggest that they should have American League and national rules in the minor leagues, so even American League pitchers would bat at times. But with the strategies now, I wouldn't say I've completely changed my mind, but I'm moving in that direction. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I really hate watching the interleague games in the National League parks. I just think it hampers the American League teams because their rosters are built differently. They're not, and their pitchers really don't hit. So I mean, really, what are we doing here?
No, I agree. I don't like the interleague games in general. I think it, I think it has diminished the All-Star game. And granted, yes, it's just an All-Star game, but the All-Star game used to be a great game. It used to be, to me, it was an event. As well as I think it diminishes the World Series itself. That's just my opinion. So, and a lot of exciting young players this year. I don't think we have a runaway rookie of the year in both leagues like we did last year.
Oh, sure we do. Oh, Ohtani is the runaway rookie of the year in the American League. He's by far. I mean, there's nobody even close.
So you're saying if Gleyber Torres doesn't continue to hit at the pace he's hitting, you think Ohtani is still a runaway?
Yeah, I think Gleyber Torres is a very nice regular player, but Ohtani is a historic player. I mean, the guy's batting over 300 as a hitter, and he's like 3 or 4-1 as a pitcher right now. He's only getting better. What he's doing hasn't been done in the major leagues since Babe Ruth. So I think he's got a chance of both being the rookie of the year and the MVP in the American League.
Okay, and what about the National League?
The National League, I'm just not that sure. I haven't seen anybody who really stands out to me. I mean, I guess this kid Muncy, who's playing first base for the Dodgers right now, could be a candidate. Obviously Acuna, who is the Atlanta's answer to Torres, and is 19 years old and just came up, and I saw him a lot in the fall league this year, and I think he's the real thing. He certainly has a really good chance of getting it, as do a couple of other their young players.
What about Walker Buehler?
A lesser candidate.
Okay, that's fair. Is there anything you'd like to touch on yourself?
Nothing in particular right now that I think is a hot button issue. Except for the fact that when you look at the way I suspected this when the season started, and you always have your outliers. And when I wrote my preview to the season, I basically said, the outliers this year I thought would be the Phillies and the Angels in both leagues. And so far, that's been true. Both teams are in the pennant race. But by and large, there's 10 good teams in the league. There are 10 middle-of-the-road teams, and there are at least 10 teams in baseball that once you throw the first pitch, their season is pretty much over. And I think the competitive balance in the league is probably as out of joint as I've seen it, and it's been evolving that way over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And what's stirring in your head for your next Forbes column? Just a hint.
I'm going to, I've got a couple in mind, but one of them is mulling over, the Hall of Fame voting, which is obviously very important to me. I mean, I've been doing it since 1992, and how the suspension of Robinson Cano because of drug use is going to make it just much more tougher than it already is.
Okay. All right, Barry, I know you're short on time. I appreciate you coming on. And I haven't had you on in like a year. I hope I can maybe, with shorter shows, I can increase the frequency.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be glad to come on whenever you need me.
I appreciate it, Barry. You have a great day, and thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next time.